Hello, my name's Keith Taylor. I'm with London Overcomers Real Pain. I'm very privileged to have with me Alex William Smith, otherwise known as Jonathan Royle. And good morning, Alex. Very privileged to have you with me. And
Good
you
morning,
are
Keith.
you are varied career. You've been in this. You've been in the circus, haven't you? Started very young. Was it 3 years of age?
Was indeed, yeah, three when I first appeared as Britain's youngest professional paid circus clown as Flap the Clown on Gandhi Circus here in England.
And then you went on from there to become famous. I think it's honest to say you're a famous stage hypnotist and also one of the world's leading hypnotherapists. I'm not insulting you calling you a hypnotherapist, am I? Because I think you're very good at that. As
No,
well as
I don't mind what I mean, titles are just titles, aren't they? And we'll probably come back to that later because it's giving things titles can sometimes give them more power and so attach more joy or more pain, which
pain.
obviously is what we're here to talk about. But yeah, I mean, I use hypnosis techniques, as people would generally call them, both for entertainment and therapeutic purposes. I wouldn't say I'm a hypnotherapist as such. I wouldn't say I'm a stage hypnotist. I wouldn't say that I'm a business consultant. I wouldn't say I was a sports motivationalist because I do them all, and I wouldn't want to appear to be a jack of all trades because the truth is it's the same central, pretty much the same central technique that's used in all those arenas. It's just to help generate different outcomes.
Yes, but going back to the beginning, 3 years old, Flap the Clown.
Hmm.
So you started work. Really, I think I was hard done by. I started work at 11 years old delivering milk, but you were 3 years old. What was that like as a 3-year-old going to work?
The honest truth, I don't remember that clearly. At the age of three, I've got photographs of myself and I look at them and I get a vague sensation of, oh yeah, that's me in that picture and that's what I was doing. um I sort of only kind of recall certain things from being about four, and the things that I do recall, and it's completely relevant to this podcast, things that have got an element of, well, there's either a massive amount of pleasure involved, so it's really significant, but more often than not, there's some level of pain involved, which makes it, which when we're growing up are the things that can quite often stick in your unconscious mind. So it was things like at the age of four, playing hide and seek on the circus with the kids from the circus, not with the general public. No offense to the general public, it's just that our area, as it were, the people traveling with the circus, the general public couldn't get to. That becomes relevant in a minute, because I went and hid underneath the lion tamer's caravan when I was playing hide and seek with the other kids off the circus, and chained up underneath the lion tamer's caravan. The general public were completely safe from it, and I would have been completely safe if I'd not crawled under the caravan. To hide was a puma, as in the wild cat, not dissimilar to a panther, but a puma. And this puma decided that it wanted to play with me. And basically, this ear, my left ear, ended up getting ripped off. I have scars down the back of my head. I've got scars all down the back of my back. And I kind of, in a weird, disassociated, like you sometimes hear people talk about near death experiences kind of manner, have this, and it could have just, this could be just something that my mind conjured up, but I have like what I can only describe as feels like it's a memory of being able to see myself underneath this caravan trailer, as we call them on the circus, and seeing myself being attacked by this puma. Now, when I say it was playing with me, that isn't as flippant as it sounds, because after I'd been saved by the lion tamer, which fortunately I was pretty much told, yes, your ear's been ripped off and you've got scars down your back and your head. And if you'd have been there much longer, then accidentally your neck could have been caught, your jugular, you could have been dead. But if it had wanted to kill me, apparently it would have all been over and done with long before. So it probably was just playing. In any event, I've got this kind of image in my mind of being able to see myself like disassociated, like an out-of-body experience, and seeing this happening to me and thinking, oh my God, there's nobody around. And I know I was screaming, help, help, help. Fortunately, the lion tamer came back. He may have been performing in the ring because the show was on at the time, or rehearsals were. But ultimately, I got saved. And took to hospital and patched up and all this, that, the other. And then ironically went back to the circus with about 20 minutes or so to spare before the second show of the day, and actually went in and did the second show of the day with my ear stuck back on, essentially. And the other thing that sticks in my head from the circus, again, pain, although it's got a strange bittersweet, it's almost, I love monkeys. Okay, I used to sponsor a monkey at Monkey World. I say used to because I've just noticed recently it lapsed, and I'll have to update it again soon. But on the circus in 1979, the original chimpanzees who did the Brook Bond PG Tips tea advert campaigns for the television here in England, if people go on YouTube, they can see the old adverts, were on the circus with us, and their trainer Billy Day. As we'd go to what they call the ring doors, or you'd call it in a theatre the wings, the side of the stage, to get ready to go on for our next bit, me and my dad, Tizzy the Clown, because we were working together as Tizzy and Flap. The chimpanzee act had finished doing its performance on stage and was making its way back to their trailer if we were in the circus, or their dressing room when we were in theatres. And we'd meet briefly. They're going back to their dressing room. We're getting ready to go to the stage because there's an act on. And every day, without fail, every show, my dad would stop briefly, turn to Billy and go, "You all right, Billy? How are you doing?" And in that moment, one of the chimpanzees that Billy was holding by its hand and walking along whacked me around the side of the head. And I apparently, so I'm told, will then go, "Dad, he's done it again, he's hit me." And again, at the time, that was daily pain. But apparently on reflection, it was just being playful because I was short and small as a 4-year-old, probably about the same height as the chimp was, because if they've got enough strength that if it had really wanted to hurt me, it could have knocked me unconscious with one whack round the head. So that's to answer your question, but the message there that hopefully listeners and viewers can get from that, and I'll try and make it a bit clearer, is that the way that we perceive things when we are young, as it's happening to us when we're really young, is the way it kind of gets locked into our personal neck-top computers, our unconscious mind, our subconscious mind. And those programs keep running when we grow up and get older, unless we do something about it, use some sort of techniques to go in and alter them, which I eventually did do in later life. But for a long time, I was walking around with this file running of nearly lucky to be alive, nearly killed by a puma, getting attacked every day by a chimpanzee whacking you around the head, getting bullied at school when I did go to school for being the odd one out, the circus clown's son, being on the circus, being a traveller, not fitting in the box with the label that people consider to be normal, which then caused other people perhaps to feel scared, maybe, looking at it from an adult perspective of this person doesn't fit in with my construct of reality, so they therefore then attack to try and make themselves feel better, which ultimately then can cause the victim or the recipient pain. And it's all about how you look at it. It's about perspective, but it's about looking at it with new eyes as well, which is easier said than done, because yes, as an adult you grow up and you can look back and go, well, you know, kids are cruel, they were probably scared or they were jealous. That was appearing in newspapers and stuff, but that didn't help in the slightest. I was being told those things at the time, but it didn't help stop the pain, the emotional pain that was felt, or the physical pain of being hit by bullies. And those negative files were still running in my unconscious, subconscious mind, as they do for a lot of people, like sexual abuse victims. They may consciously think they've got over it totally, but they wonder why there's blocks holding them back. Well, it's because the unconscious, subconscious mind's not fully dealt with. The inner child, the mind of that child is still there. Okay, somewhere in the unconscious, subconscious, and you've got to go and rectify the traumas that the younger you had, that could be running negative programs that are still holding you back now. And you know, I'm no exception to that. I had to go and do stuff to I use the word FAR. Perhaps this will make it clearer. The word FAR, FAR. The things that hold us back in life, cause problems, cause pain, or amplify things that might be a little bit uncomfortable or a bit painful, but amplify them out of all proportion. The word FAR reminds me of fear, frustration, failure. Then the letter A is anger, anguish, anxiety. And the letter R is resentment, remorse, regret. These are all kind of emotional states that we can get into or have running in our unconscious, subconscious mind based on events that have happened previously. And if we allow them to keep running, it can drag us down, cause blocks, cause pain, emotionally, physically, can even manifest health issues. And as I've said in previous podcasts with your good self that people can find if they go on YouTube and type in your name and my name, as a therapist, one of the most important things we do when people come to us, or one of the most important things they can learn to do for themselves, is to let go of all self-blame, shame, guilt, and regret connected to past traumas, incidents, past perceived failures, frustrations, or fears, past anguish, anxieties, or anger, past resentments, regrets, or remorse that they're still running those programs of now, that are holding them back, amplifying pain or causing pain, or a combination thereof. And the solution is to flip FAR on its head. So it's still FAR, but you've just got to change your perspective, look at it differently. So it's F, forgiveness. And that's forgiving yourself for not having dealt with it sooner. That's forgiving yourself for having allowed yourself to suffer to levels that were unnecessary for so long. But it can also be forgiving the person who bullied you or sexually abused you. And I don't mean in a manner where you have to go and confront them. In fact, most of the time, certainly with things like physical sexual abuse and stuff like that, I really no, don't. That'd be more traumatic and nerve-wracking and whatever. But it's about mentally forgiving. The person doesn't need to know you've forgiven them. They don't need to have that smug satisfaction of potentially thinking they've kind of got away with it. You know, it's just your unconscious, subconscious mind that needs to know you're forgiven and can let go, move on. So then A, acceptance. It's happened. There's not really anything, you can't go back and change it. The past is history. The future's a mystery. We can have goals, dreams, and ambitions, yes, and we can do what we possibly can to make it probable, unlikely that we're going down the right path for those things to happen, but we can never 100% fully guarantee. So it's pointless being too, if you dwell in the past on what ifs, shoulda, coulda, didn't do's, regrets and all that kind of stuff, then that's what causes depression, sticks you in the deep dark clouds. If you spend all your time stuck in the future, focused on, I hope this happens, everything, I'll be happy when this finally happens in life, then you will cause anxieties and fears of potential failure, sometimes even fears of potential success. It's just, so the past is history, the future is a mystery. Today is the present, the here and now. It's the greatest gift of all. That is why they call it the present. And you've got to live in the moment. But the only way you can live in the moment is to deal with those negative programs that are running in your unconscious, subconscious mind from things that happened when you were. It all starts from birth to about the teenage years, because we see things as a child then differently than we do when we grow up, but they get stored in the way the child perceived them. And that program, the childlike inner child, is running those programs in the manner of a child, with those fears, with those insecurities, only with the understanding of a child. And that's why sometimes with my therapeutic work, I will get people to imagine while they're in a relaxed, hypnotic state, that they go back in time, not themselves, they're still their fully conscious adult self, but they imagine seeing, almost as an observer, a third-party observer, the younger them being upset from the abuse they got or the bullying, and being able to go up to them, hug them, give them the reassurance that they, if they've had at the time, wouldn't have left a negative imprint or program. Give them a hug. Say it's okay. It's not your fault. You'll grow up and you will get over this. So that the young child mind within, and this is just a metaphor, but it does prove wonderfully therapeutic, is then able to go, I can stop blaming myself. It's not my fault. And I do survive. And to then let go of it, and then it has a knock-on effect all through the kind of timeline of their life and memories and patterns here, to reprogram the computers so that in the here and now, people can actually move more forward more freely.
You can take the memory and build a frame around it, can't you, Alex? Like a picture frame, you can take that memory, build a picture frame around it, and then you can move it to the side or behind, and you feel then that you're in control of that memory, because at the moment the memory is controlling you, but you build the picture frame around it, and then you can change the size of it and change the intensity of it and move it somewhere else. So you could move it behind you and imagine nailing it to the wall so that it can't go with you, and then you can move away from it, can't you?
Yeah.
There are all
the
kinds
key
of
word there is change.
Change it. There's all kinds of techniques as a hypnotherapist, because I'm a hypnotherapist as well, that we can use to give you control over the memory.
Or that you can use yourself, because the key word is change. That's the best word. I'm glad you said it. And it can be that simple as imagining that reoccurs, that's holding you back, and change things. Change. If it's currently in color, you see it, turn it to black and white. If you see it in black and white, ironically make it color. It's the reverse, make it the opposite, because if you make the way they call it VACOG, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory, but it's basically, in layman's terms, the way that you taste, smell, see, feel, or hear things as memories, as experiences. If you alter them to the opposite of what they currently are, if it's causing a negative thing, then by altering them all to the opposite, it has to have an opposite reaction and effect, knock-on wise, which means it can no longer bother you, worry you, or concern you as it once did in the past. So we're so much in sync. When you first, right at the beginning of what you were saying, you started to talk about pain, and that was the word that was in my mind, and I'm thinking we're totally in sync here. And that's the power of the collective consciousness, which I believe in a lot. And you were also talking about
when you saw the event of the was it Puma?
Yeah, it was a puma.
When you
Yeah.
saw the Puma, and it was like you were disassociated and standing outside of yourself. That was I was very much thinking of that. Before you said it, I was thinking that you're going to dissociate, and then you started talking about dissociation, which is very weird. And dissociation is very much what happened.
I have no memory of it actually. I have, as I say, I've got this. I became disassociated, and I kind of can remember. It's like I can see myself being scared, but I had no memory of the fear because I'd disassociated.
Yes.
And as you know well, Keith, having worked with clients, disassociation, distraction of the conscious mind from a physical pain or an emotional pain, can be one of the most effective ways of, you know, if you've got somebody with what a conventional doctor says is a long-term pain issue like arthritis, giving their conscious mind something else to focus on, so they disassociate, are distracted from that normally niggles and bothers them, can be one of the easiest, most effective ways that people can learn to manage and overcome long-term pain issues.
Yes. Well, when I help people stop pain, I just distract them from the pain, and the pain goes. It's often people tell me that my voice makes them feel better, and it always amazes me because I listen to my voice on a tape recorder and I can't stand it. But
I think we're all like that because we have a different perception.
yes,
Yeah.
but people tell me it makes them feel better, and their pain goes just because I'm talking to them. I tell them the pain's going to go, and I tell them in such a convincing way, they believe me, and the pain goes because I distract them and talk about other things, and I tell them stories, and the pain goes. And the amazing thing is, it stays gone. And if that works, that's good enough for me. And if it's good enough for me and it's good enough for them, we're both in agreement, then that's the name of the game.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's quite often so many people that conventional medical wisdom, because it's an invisible, intangible thing. You know, a doctor can end up saying, "Well, there's no reason why you should be in pain. We've done X-rays, X, Y, Z, so clearly it must be arthritis or something." They'll give it a label, and at that moment, the person can choose to take ownership of that in a positive or a negative fashion. Positively, can go, "Well, the doctor's saying that, so." But I'll be positive about it. I'll accept the fact that it's probably arthritis, but at least that means that everything else is clear. So I haven't got a hidden cancer. I haven't got a broken bone. There's so many positives that now I haven't got all these issues. So yeah, I've got to accept the fact that there's an issue there that's the cause of this apparent pain. But if I spend time focused on that, you get more of what you focus on in life. What resists persists.
You're reading my mind again.
Emile Coué's law of reversed effort. Hypnotists know if you tell somebody to try to separate their hands, for example, that the more they try, because of virtue of that word try implying there's a possibility that it might not be possible, it makes it more likely that the person will find that the hands are locked. In the same way, if a person goes, "I'll try not to focus on it," they're more likely to end up focusing more on pain and therefore amplifying it. But in truth, quite often these people who got given that label, they could have accepted it, as I say, from the positive. It means it's nothing serious. But now, you know what? I'll let it be, and I'll not focus my energies on it. I'll find other things to do, because a late famous hypnotherapist, Dave Alman, noted in his book Hypnotherapy, victims will come into a burn unit in severe pain and agony. And he'd run up to them in the emergency room and go, "Hey, what's your name?" And they might go, "Roger." "Okay, Roger, what's your favorite thing on the entire planet to do?" And the person might say, "I love playing tennis." And he'd immediately go, "Okay, close your eyes and think of all those times you loved and do love and continue to love playing tennis. The times when you've been really in the zone, when you've had the best matches and all that. And just so long as you keep playing tennis in your mind's eye, then you notice that the level of discomfort that you feel is getting smaller and smaller and fading away more rapidly with each second that passes by. Well, yeah, there's the obvious thing that he stopped using the word pain and started to call it discomfort, which lowers it down. But also there's the fact that the person's got a lifetime of playing tennis memories filed with joyful, happy, relaxed, physiological states already anchored
when he
physiologically. Pardon?
When he wasn't in pain.
Exactly. So by conjuring up those memories again, by focusing on them, it is triggering off the anchored, or as some people in conventional psychology would call it, state-dependent memories and learned behavior that he's already got connected to tennis off, because the mind doesn't know the difference between, the unconscious doesn't know the difference between an imagined event and reality. So the body will think it's genuinely playing tennis, and that will trigger off the feel-good chemicals, which are the body's best natural painkillers anyway. That's a knock-on side effect positively for the individual. And this helps people immensely in burns units. And it can, a simple technique like that also, if somebody with medical science say, look, you're going to be on painkillers for life. Well, I know people that have stopped taking their painkillers. I'm not advising people do that without consulting their medical GP.
Because we're not giving medical advice on this show.
No, you do it in a controlled manner with your conventional medical GP's supervision. But I've known people who've been on high amounts of painkillers for years and years who've either fully got off them or massively reduced to a far more safe and beneficial level, and yet their pain, as they would have labelled it in the past, has either gone completely in the way they perceive it or has dissipated to such a level that they find it laughable compared to what they used to put up with. That it really doesn't bother them, because they're like, crikey, why did I have so many years that I put up with it the way it was, when it could be this simple as it really can, as you know, to change your focus of energies and attention.
I think we should, when I put this show up, I think we should offer it with a prescription, because people listening to this show will lose their pain.
They will, just so long, well, to a degree. They may not, we can't, because we're not allowed to legally guarantee anything anyway. They may find,
and you're quite right to reprimand me there, because we can't make false claims, but their level of pain
will certainly dissipate and reduce more rapidly than perhaps they thought would be possible, just so long as they allow themselves to focus on, the moment they feel a niggle or a pain, whether it's an emotional or a physical one, divert your attention to something that you recall as being joyful, pleasurable, relaxing, and that made you feel good at the time in your life, because in turn that will help trigger off that state-dependent memory learned behavior or anchored physiological feelings, call it what you will, to help you feel better.
And I do invite the listener to make a note below of your results, because I feel sure that you'll have
another little tip. I'm sorry to be gross if you're watching this, but I'm about to show you my tongue, viewers, and saliva on it. I know that seems a bit gross. It will make sense in a minute. The thing is that when you've got saliva in your mouth, okay, you can only really get saliva in your mouth to a massive degree when you're calm and relaxed. When you are completely stressed out and in a state of fear on the fight or flight kind of scale of life, your mouth gets dry. When you're confronted by the dinosaur, scared, you get in that moment of, do I fight the dinosaur and maybe win and also take home dinner as well as surviving? Or do I try to run like the clappers to get away, flight? Do I end up freezing, like almost like in a hypnotic state of, should I fight? Should I run? I don't know, like the cat in the headlights. Or do you shite? Because it's actually fight, flight, freeze or shite. And shite meaning literally to defecate, to hopefully cause a natural stink that would scare off the dinosaur. This is the animalistic fight, flight, freeze and shite. Fortunately, generally speaking, it's mainly fight and flight. Now, but when you're in the fear element of it, which quite often with the cliche fears quite often stands for false evidence against reality or false evidence appearing real, because it's about the perceptions and the value we add to it, blowing it up out of proportion. You know, the moment you get labeled by a doctor as having a long-term health complaint, that label for most people automatically makes the pain they feel or worse. Whereas if you go, that's the doctor's language in their arena of their medical field. But what does that really mean to me? Well, what it means is, according to the doctor, most people, and they can only ever say most people, have issues with that particular thing, X, Y, or Z, for life. However, they can never say all people, because you can, if you go and look, find evidence of people with practically any and all illnesses that defy conventional medical science. And the way to dissipate your pain and reduce it in such circumstance is to purposely go and seek out as much evidence of people who were not held back in life by that thing, who didn't let it ruin their life, so you can see what is possible in the world, as they say in NLP. If it's possible out in the world for somebody else, then it's possible for me or you. And they can never say it's impossible. They can only say most people. So you can choose to disregard that in a sensible manner, where you still keep consulting with your medical GP if it's something that, you know, in certain arenas, use common sense. But you can choose to focus more of your energies on the fact that there's people out there who've overcome these things. There's people out there who've lived with them for life, but in a manner where they weren't in severe agony all the time, because they focus more on those hobbies they enjoyed, or they focus more on spending time with the people that made them feel good. It's about energy goes where energy flows where attention goes. And the type of energy, whether it's negative or positive, is down to what thoughts, signals, and things that you're processing.
That's right. And going back to what you said about saliva on the tongue, Jonathan, that's right. When I keep saliva on my, or if you keep saliva on your tongue, it reduces pain. And that's how I went through surgery without anesthetic. And you know that I've actually done surgery on myself. And I always keep saliva on my tongue, and if you press your tongue into the back of your top teeth and keep it up against the palate with saliva in your tongue, that helps you to reduce your perception of pain.
And it does physiologically, because there's a connection to having the saliva in your mouth. There's a physiological state-dependent memory learned behavior or anchored response, call it what you want. There's a genuine physiological one of relaxation, and relaxation is the opposite of the stress that has to be linked in with pain. Is a tension, is a stress.
It induces immediate calm when you've got saliva on the tongue and you press the tongue into the roof of the mouth behind the teeth. It triggers the vagus nerve, the wandering nerve, which attaches between the brain and all the organs in your body and forces your body to relax. And when you're relaxed, your perception of pain is reduced. You feel calm.
Exactly.
And if you also smile like that, it also reduces your perception of I'm not going to say pain anymore, discomfort.
Yeah.
Reduces.
And as Spanish surgeon, Dr. Angel Escudero, devised a technique he called noisy therapy, which basically means treatment through thought. And the key to that was getting saliva on your tongue. And then while the saliva's there, as daft as it sounds, because talking with the saliva on your tongue is a bit awkward. You sound like you've got, no offense to anyone with speech impediments, but you end up sounding like you've got speech impediment. So it's probably best to do it when no one else is about, or do it quite quietly so they don't hear. But he found that if you give yourself affirmations, suggestions, or hypnotic commands, as they may be called, because arguably this state that's triggered off physiologically with the saliva and the focus of the tongue against the back of your teeth, it's a fixation of attention on one thing, excluding everything else, arguably is helping to bypass the critical faculty analytical area of the brain and causing an eyes open, or you can close your eyes if you want, state of hypnosis, what people call hypnosis. And, you know, he would get people to, with the saliva on the tongue, get to the back of their teeth, say a phrase like, you know, my left arm is now completely anesthetized. So, yeah, it sounds ridiculous. My left arm is now completely anesthetized. It does sound a bit ridiculous, but you get them to do it 3 times, and then you'd be able to cut up and do an operation on their arm without any conventional anaesthetic, and they didn't feel a thing. They're wide awake. There's videos galore of him. If you go on the YouTube, Dr. Angel Escudero in Valencia, Spain, doing this. So it's a good time to give yourself suggestions. You know, if you've got a long-term discomfort that's reducing every day and every moment that you listen to this, it's also reducing each second of each minute of each hour, day, week, month and year from this moment forward. You find you can awaken in the morning with an inner warm glow of confidence, a renewed optimism to life, a more positive attitude to get things done, where as an automatic reflex action, that discomfort keeps just melting down and down to the point where it's almost non-existent. But if ever it does twinge a little bit more than normal, you can just focus your energies on that you enjoy, memories of the sport we talked about before, or take a few moments to think of a horrible, bitter, sour, juicy lemon, someone taking a knife, cutting it in half, and taking just one half of that lemon that's dripping the juice out, and taking it and sucking in on that lemon. And you're going to find you've got saliva coming into your mouth. No? You're starting to run with saliva. That's great. You can think of that to help you trigger the saliva, to then give yourself a positive command or suggestion that you feel no discomfort whatsoever, and change your focus and energies onto positive things.
Yes, I can taste that bitterness now. And I wonder how many of our audience have got that bitter taste in their mouth, making them dribble.
Yeah. Sorry about
that. I imagine most of them. And I'm thinking probably you have also, Alex, got that bitterness in your mouth now. I can see it in your face.
Yeah, that's why I just had a drink. Yeah.
Yes. And wonderful. It's we talked a lot about pain or discomfort. Mustn't use that pain word.
Well, it's what was pain. When you look back, you're always going to use the word pain in your life. You're never going to get away from it entirely, because once you've dealt with that used to be labeled as pain, so that it dissipates to a degree that's more than manageable for you, it's not really a big deal. You might have to acknowledge it. There's some circumstances where it's just kind of impossible to say that you're going to have zero discomfort ever, but it can be got to a level where it's so minimal it doesn't bother you, it doesn't hold you back, where you can stop having those night terrors or nightmares you may have had in the past about abuse or bullying, because you've gone inside and helped the inner child to get rid of any self-blame, shame, guilt or regret that was holding it back, so that then it can have all the knock-on positive effects that you as the adult can forgive, accept, realize and release, that you can move forward and it doesn't have to affect you as it once did in the past any longer. And there may be moments where you need to do little things like the saliva thing, or focus on things and put yourself into check rather than going along in autopilot like a sleepwalking zombie.
Yes. I'd like to say to the people who are listening who may be in pain, and what just disclaimer before I say this, I'm not giving medical advice because we don't do that on this show. Mm-hmm. But for those of you who are listening who are in pain, there are 2 types of pain. There's new pain, that's to do with injuries you've just received. If you've got a broken leg, that's new pain, in which case you need to get immediate medical attention. That's only sensible. And there's old pain. That's pain that you've had for a long, long time, and it may be chronic pain. For those of you who've got old pain, what I want you to do is to just imagine that you're beginning to have a dialogue with that injury, with that pain, wherever it is. Imagine you're just beginning to have a chat with that area where the discomfort is. And begin to talk to that area and ask yourself, could some of that discomfort be caused by the muscles in the area, because you've been focused on that area for so long that all the surrounding muscles have just been reacting to that, and they've just become tense and tight and wound up because you focused on it in the area, so they've just reacted. And when you're doing that, the surrounding area gives you sympathetic pain and all the muscles tighten up. Just imagine if you would just start to think about those muscles around there and just start asking them to just relax. And you might find that if you do that, pretty soon they'll just start to loosen, soften, and let go. And your area or your discomfort will start to diminish, probably quite quickly. And the more you start to have that conversation with that area, and just imagine, you could even imagine that you've got a warm pad there or a heat ray lamp, just easing and softening them and letting them go. And let us know in the notes underneath this podcast what effect that's had for you, because a lot of the pain is you don't do it intentionally, but it is in many ways self-inflicted, because you're so focused on the discomfort, it causes tension in the muscles in the area.
This
So
is
just let them
where
go.
forgiveness comes in again,
Yes, you read my mind.
because let's take an imaginary lady called Mary. Imaginary Mary has been getting up each morning and she needs help to get out of bed. She's so in pain and agony that she then needs to be given a medication. And you can almost write the rest of it. Every element of a day is structured around pain. I'm in pain. I've got to deal with. Oh, it's all right. It's better than it was, but the tablets are starting to. The attention that she's getting is all focused around that. Now, that was fine at the time when that was genuine. I'm not saying it's not genuine pain, but when it was new pain, shall we say, in the example you've given, that would have been fine. But now it's been established that it's nothing life-threatening. If you get a headache, don't make the pain disappear. If the headache's still there a few days later, it might be a good idea to go to a conventional doctor in case that pain's being caused by a brain tumor. Sometimes pain is a signal of something bigger. Other times it can be as simple as what we've talked about. It's that Mary's actually in a position that she could, if she forgives herself, accepts a position in life, realizes such, and releases what therapists and doctors can call secondary gains, namely the fact that she's getting attention. She might therefore be seeing her family more often than she perceives she would if she was no longer to have that pain. She might be getting more visitors. There's various ways that people can apparently gain. It can seem more beneficial to them at an unconscious level to keep that pain than letting go of it, because then they could lose the visits every day from the home help, or the family being as attentive is the way they perceive it. So one of the keys is to be people internally can kind of realize this at an unconscious level. I'm not saying they realize it consciously, but they don't let go because deep down they figure that they might lose things, and because of that, then they might not feel as wanted, as loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, or valued. They might not feel as good as a person. Now, this is amplified by the idea that they could just do some simple techniques. Some people will be put off from the simplicity of what we've talked about, because if they started doing that and immediately dramatically get a massive reduction in the discomfort they were feeling, and that they feel in the future far less than they ever did in the past, then, well, I'll let you into a secret, viewers and listeners. You could always just tell a white lie or omit from saying anything to your family and friends about the levels having reduced so dramatically, if you really want to fill some void of they're getting their attention and them visiting, you know. You don't have to actually have the pain to continue getting the benefits you were getting. Now, I'm not saying that's ethical or moral, and I'm not saying you should do that. In fact, you'll feel even better about yourself as a person when you forgive, accept, realize, release, and let go of any self-blame, shame, guilt, or regret around it, and find a way to feel loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued, and whole as a person without needing to play the pain card to get attention. But here's the beautiful thing. When the pain's disappeared, dissipated, yeah, you might not see the family members as often in this imaginary example. But because you're in less discomfort and you've got more flexibility and movement, you'll feel more positive and able to perhaps start a new hobby or pastime that gets you out the house more and gets you meeting more people and gets you to widen your social circle and gets you to feel worthwhile, loved, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued. So we can fill that gap in a positive manner and make you feel whole again as a person without the need for pain or discomfort to be, you know, in the equation. But again, some people are put off from doing that even when they realise that that's the truth of the matter. Because what if I wake up in the morning, Mary wakes up, gets up of herself, home helper writes, "Oh, it's all right, I got myself up. Have you had your, oh, that's weird. Have you had your tablets, Mary?" "No, actually, I don't feel like I need them at the minute." Suddenly, home help stops. There's the knock-on effect of losing things. But also, home help's going to go, "You might just be having a weird, odd, okay day, Mary. I really think you should take your tablets." Because people can't, especially that work in conventional medical fields, often can't accept things can change that quickly, positively, and rapidly. And can therefore give negative suggestions. And that person can then feel a bit daft or bad and start doubting their own mind power abilities, and also feel criticised and attacked that they're being told that what they're feeling is wrong. Or some people might go, "Well, if it was that easy, Mary, to dissipate your pain, lower it down without drugs, why didn't you do it sooner, you silly old moo?" Making her feel bad. So what happens is relapse, so that she can prove she's not a silly old moo and feel worthwhile again and feel not criticised. Which is why often these rapid changes that on a long-term lasting manner only happen when people have been to consult a professional, qualified, ethical hypnotherapist like your good self, Keith, or myself, or one of our colleagues. Not because we particularly do anything other than we've shared with people, but because when they leave us, when they notice all those wonderful, fantastic changes happening that they could be noticing right now anyway, when they choose to accept, believe, and realize, forgive, and all the stuff we've talked about, they've got a safety shield. Because when the family and friends go, "If it was that easy, why didn't you do it sooner?" They can say, "If I'd known about Keith Taylor, hypnotherapist, or Jonathan Royle, hypnotist, then I would have gone to see them sooner to give it a go. And then, yeah, I would have had this result sooner. But I didn't know about it." And effectively, that removes all self-blame, shame, guilt, and regret from them. They can no longer kind of been attacked for not doing it or criticised for not doing it sooner. And it gives them permission to change and a safe environment to do those changes in. So, but guess what? You could always tell a little white lie. A white lie with positive intent doesn't harm anyone. So if you but to use the techniques Keith and his other guests share with you, and we've shared with you in this, and notice as you will, when you believe, accept, forgive, accept, close your eyes, do that imaginary thing, going back, seeing yourself as a child, say yes, use the Ho'oponopono techniques, the Hawaiian forgiveness ritual, go to the inner child you, imagine hugging them and go, "I'm sorry for not being there at the time. I forgive you. Please forgive me. I love you." And then imagine the young child saying to the adult you, "I'm sorry. I forgive you too. Please forgive me. I love you." And notice how much better you feel after you've done that. It's like you can sever the negative connections. What's actually happening is you're helping the amygdala in the brain to process the final negative remnants of the trauma, to release it, to allow you to move forward. And you can do that, and give yourself the invisible safety blanket by just telling a little white lie. Well, it's not actually a white lie, it's just phrasing it a bit differently. Because by listening to this and participating using the techniques, you can genuinely say that you've received professional advice from a clinical hypnotherapist and a celebrity hypnotist who's dealt with celebrities galore in ways to effectively manage and overcome those issues that bothered you in the past, and that it's having great results and will be better the longer you use the techniques. That will be totally truthful. You just admit to say it was watching or listening to a podcast, and those people around you who may have been critical in the example I gave will perceive that you've been to a therapist and gone through that important seeming ritualistic process. So it will give you that invisible safety blanket where you kind of can't be personally attacked.
They could always do that other thing that some people do. I don't know if I even dare say it. Some of those people do who've overcome their problems, and I know that many of us who are therapists started by overcoming their problems, and then they took the next step and they became a therapist because of their experiences, didn't they?
The really good ones did. Sadly, unfortunately, the vast majority are still searching for answers, such as the delicate nature of the industry and the individuals attracted to it. Because as Sigmund Freud, or as better known to most people as Sigmund Freud, said, most therapists are merely people searching for answers to their own problems. But as
Yes.
you quite rightly say, those that really make it to the top and become really successful tend to be the ones that actually do find the solutions to the problems they once had in the past.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you for mentioning me as being a good therapist, because I did have a major problem of my own in the past. I was paralyzed from the neck down. I would say that was a major problem, which I overcame.
Yeah, I think that rate's on
It was a bit of a problem.
significant. Yeah,
It was a bit of a setback. And you mentioned celebrities that you've seen and treated. Would you like to tell us their names, one or two of them?
And I can mention a couple only because I got permission to, or it's in the public domain. Obviously, those that I've dealt with that didn't give permission or haven't spoken to the media, then obviously I can't. But I mean, in the past, I can sit here and I've had therapeutic encounters with the world famous actor Robert De Niro, the comedy actor and comedian Billy Crystal. That actually came about as part of the promotion for their film Analyze That. I've had literally shortly, a matter of weeks after me hypnotizing pretty much the entire Wigan Athletic, is it? I'm rubbish with football. Wigan Athletic football team. Within a few weeks, the game transformed and they ended up in the I think it's Premiership. They ended up higher up than they were at the time, and everyone was amazed. Same thing with Blackburn Rovers a number of years back. Helped them, hypnotized all their players and whatnot. There's nothing, to be honest, there's no big deal about helping celebrities. At the end of the day, they all, excuse the language, they all poo and wee the same as we do. We're all the same. It just, people seem to be impressed when you go, oh yeah, I've dealt with celebrities. But yeah, it's good for marketing and getting clients. But the processes I use are the same processes I use for, all of us.
And they are ordinary people, aren't they? They like to be treated like ordinary people.
Most of them. As with any industry or walk of life, there are some complete and utter effing, so you don't have to bleep, arseholes out there who are so full of themselves and offish with people and they forget where they've come from and all this, that, the other. But the vast majority are just like you and me. They've got the same insecurities. And sometimes, one thing I've learned through dealing with celebrities and millionaire and even billionaire on the odd occasion clients is, you think a lot of people look from the outside and go, wow, I wish I could win the lottery or my business to take off to such a level that I could have those millions or billions and have the big house like that and the car and all that attention. And you know what? When you talk to most of these people who are in that situation, all they yearn for is to kind of not have to carry on selling themselves so much, but be able to get that. Ultimately, they want to feel loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, special. But by the same token, there's a conflict because they'd sooner keep themselves a bit more out of the public eye, but they can't because that's the way they end up feeling loved or getting. And that can cause conflicts. And they can actually have inner turmoils and anxieties and stuff that far outweigh people who've got far less money. But that's not to dissipate that, I'm not belittling the people who haven't got money, because I can honestly tell you that if I was going to be really unhappy in life, I'd sooner be unhappy with a lot of money than unhappy with no money. Because at least,
money will buy you a lot of unhappiness, won't it?
Yeah.
What they say. I've met a lot of celebrities, and I've liked all of them that I've met, apart from one that I was a big fan of until I met her. Okay. And I won't say her name because she's dead now. But when I met her, she told me to F off. And all I said was hello. And I instantly, and she was a comedian, but I was not impressed by because I only said hello, and I was only walking past her. I just said hello, and I was going to walk past. And she just turned to me and she said, F off. And I was not impressed by the way she approached me, because I don't pester celebrities, because they're just ordinary human people and I respect the time. And I just saw her walking towards me in Wimbledon. She was, and I just said hello, just in passing, being polite, just recognizing her. And I was just just going on my way. And she just looked at me. I'd been polite to her and said hello, just to let her know I'd seen her, and I was going to carry on. And she told me to F off. She must have had a bad day.
Everyone can have bad days, but there again, it's just, who knows? It's not got, one of the best. There was a very famous book called The Secret, and sadly, it doesn't contain the key. Well, it does and it doesn't contain the secret to life, because law of attraction, largely as taught by most people, is BS. Because it portrays the idea that thought alone will manifest everything into your life, and that's nonsense, because you do have to take some physical action. Simple as. And that's the missing bit that isn't mentioned. But one thing worth noting is they talk about having an attitude of gratitude, being grateful for that you've got, and therefore it's more likely that you will get more in. And two living examples of this, if you don't know who they are, go on YouTube and type in their names. Penn Jillette, and I've forgotten his first name, but he's known as Teller. Basically, Penn and Teller, the American magicians and illusionists.
Yes.
And I went out to Vegas a few years back to do a hypnotherapy training seminar where I was teaching people. And one evening, myself and all the delegates went to see Penn and Teller's show. And there must have been about 1,500 people in the audience, because I think that's about the seating of that particular venue. And they're sold out every day for years. Anyway, afterwards, thought, well, hang about a bit, see if there's any possible chance. And we see that, there's not everyone, but there's got to be, I'd say, 2/3 of the audience are lingering outside. So there's probably 1,000 people. And it's pretty pointless. We saw them come out the stage door, and we weren't right at the back, but we could see there's probably a good 700 people in front of us. And we thought, they're going to get fed up. They're going to go. It's pointless waiting around. And then suddenly, a couple of staff from the casino came and said to people who appeared to be ferreting off, they goes, are you waiting for autographs and photos with Penn and Teller? And they went, yeah, but obviously we don't stand a chance. They said, well, it's up to you. But we can tell you now, they won't leave this building until every last one of you that wants a photograph or autograph has had it. And I thought, are you sure? Fair enough. She'd reassured us. So some didn't believe, some left. And sure enough, we had to stand around, but we had a chat amongst ourselves about how fantastic the show was. And it really was. I recommend it to anyone who goes out to Vegas or gets a chance to see them when they're touring in England. And it probably took an hour and a half before they got to us, but they did. And once we got our photographs and signatures, we witnessed them. They did stay for everyone. And I asked them and I said, wow, does this happen like every night? And it was actually Teller, the short one that never speaks on stage, and it's really weird. He actually speaks to you after the show when he's doing autographs. Such a lovely gentleman. And Penn's a great guy as well. So much so that after that, I donated some money to his crowdfunding for his film director's cut. So if you get his crazy weird ass movie, actually voted. Just let me reach behind me. Best weird ass crazy crowdfunded movie of 2018, director's cut with Penn Jillette. You'll see my name, Jonathan Royle, on the credits. Anyway, sorry, I digress there. And I asked and I said, does this happen every day? And they went, yeah, pretty much. I said, don't you get fed up? He said, yeah, it can be a bit tiring. There can be days where you're feeling down. You want to get home, see the family. He said, but the fact is this, we're very lucky. We've been here for years. We sell out every night. The reason we sell out is because people will go away, give rave reviews. It's partly because of the content of the show. But people always say it was great. They got to have photographs and meet and get autographs and all that. And that means that we carry on being full and successful. And he said, we never forget that the reason we're here is because of the people. And
Amazing.
I thought, yeah, and then I mean that epitomizes the attitude of great. They will wait however long it takes that everyone gets the photos and autographs, but as a result, it comes back to them. But they've taken positive action now. It's not just mentally going thanks to all the world. There's an element of physical action has to take place for the rewards to come back.
Can I stop you there?
Of course you can.
Speaking of taking positive action, years ago when I was a young lad, and I wasn't as forthcoming as I was now, because I used to be I still am introverted in many ways, but I used to be really shy and retiring. And when I was in my 30s, I think it was, I went to see a show in Croydon with Eartha Kitt. And as I walked into the theatre, I was a real big fan of hers. I mean, who wouldn't be? And I went into the theatre to see her in Fairfield Halls at Croydon. It was the Ashcroft Theatre at Fairfield Halls in Croydon. And I was thinking, how could I possibly meet her? It was impossible, because she's a big star. She's not going to meet me. And as I went into the theatre, and I went into the theatre, and the theatre was packed, except for where I bought a front row ticket, and the seats were in 4 sections. There was the left-hand front section, left-hand rear section, the right-hand front section, and the right-hand rear section. And all the seats were sold except for the front right-hand section were empty, except for my seat in the front middle of the front row. I don't know how this happened, but all of the front right-hand seats were empty except for my seat. So I was in the front right-hand section of seats exclusively on my own. None of the seats were sold except for mine, which was amazing. So I was there on my own in the front right-hand seat. And Eartha was on the stage doing her singing act fabulously, which she does. And she was on the, she was going along the front row on the left-hand section of seats, singing to everybody. And she was performing to that side of the audience, and she was singing about money as she does. And she was going over to the audience that side saying, come back to my dressing room later and see me. And these men were with their wives, and then she would go back to them saying, no, don't bother, you didn't bring your checkbook. And everybody laughed. But she kept using this line, and she was wearing it a bit thin. And I thought to myself, if she comes over to my side, I'm going to throw my checkbook at her. But she wasn't coming. She wasn't coming over to my side at all. And then she used this line so many times it was getting boring. And then after a while, she walked over to my side of the stage, didn't look at me or anything, and she didn't use that line, but she walked over to my side of the stage. I And I was really shy. I would never do anything like this. I don't know what gripped me. But I took positive action because I took my checkbook out and I threw it onto the stage at her feet, and she nearly fell over it. And she bent down, picked it up and put it on the grand piano. Didn't look at me at all. And then she went back to the other side of the stage and the audience roared. Must have thought I was part of the act.
Yeah.
And that would have explained why she was wearing this line about the checkbook thin. Because she was going to come over to my side of the audience, I was going to throw the checkbook out.
With a major punchline, yeah, there'd been a build up.
I was part of the act. But at the end of the show, she sent one of her staff down to grab me out of the audience and take me up to her dressing room to explain myself to her. I was amazed. I'm thinking, Christ, I'm sorry for that blasphemy. I'm getting into Eartha Kitt's dress. So I was in there with Eartha Kitt on my own, drinking champagne with her, and we were getting really pally. I mean, really close. Nice. And she was about 70 then. And she was lovely. And I was doing really well, really friendly with her. Friendly. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I was doing really well until there was a knock on the door. And one of her aides came in and said, Windsor Davies is outside. Would you like to meet him? And Windsor Davies, the actor,
yeah,
8.5 Hot Mum. And she said, who? And he said, Windsor Davies. He's well known. He's an actor. And then she looked really ticked off because I was getting on really well with her. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, you better bring him in then. And so he came in and he was really rude because I was standing this close to her. Mm-hmm. And he stepped between us and pushed me backwards and started chatting with her. So I was a loose end then. And if I was the man I am now, I'd have decked him. But I was a shy guy then, and she was chatting with him, and I was nowhere. He put me in my place, as it were. And so I sort of left the room. But I should have stayed there because as I shut the door behind me, the door opened again and he followed me out. She must have kicked him out.
Oh.
Because she must have been really ticked because he was so rude. And she must have dispatched him. And I wish I'd stayed in there. I should have walked back in there. But I was getting on with her really well. But she took my checkbook from me. She was telling me that she had a children's charity in New York that she looked after because she was very much into looking after the children because she came from a deprived background herself. And she thought I was a big tycoon. I was trying to persuade her I wasn't because I was unemployed at the time, but she was having none of it because I was wearing a suit and she thought I'd bought all of those seats. And I said, I didn't, I just bought one seat. And she wouldn't believe me. And she made me write her a check for £50 for my checkbook and she kept my checkbook as a souvenir. But £50 in those days was a lot of money.
Great story.
Yeah. I wonder what happened to that checkbook.
Well, who knows?
Didn't have cash cards in those days.
Great story, great memories, things like that.
I should have, but you have to take. I took action and threw it on the stage.
And that's the key thing there. That's the key takeout. You're going to take action, but also another takeout is the way people perceive things doesn't necessarily have basis in reality. Yeah. It would have looked like the most logical, quick result thing would be to think that you had bought all those seats just so you could be on your own, which means you must have been a severely, rich net worth individual.
Yes, but who knows what would have happened if I'd stayed in that room? Might have ended up marrying her or something. I wish I'd stayed in that room. I could be a completely different position now.
You could, but then we wouldn't be talking like this. And we wouldn't be helping the viewers and listeners, to change their lives for the better.
I think if it was meant to be, we'd have still met.
True.
Who knows? We might have met under different circumstances and you might have been in different circumstances now. You don't know.
Yeah, that's true. But that's the thing. We can't dwell in the past. Great to have positive memories and stuff to go into and enjoy and learn from. And that's the key. Learning from something is it's still a form of taking action.
But I still benefited from meeting Eartha Kitt, because made me look. I looked at myself in a completely new light after that, and I thought I never looked at myself as an executive before, but I have done ever since.
Excellent.
It was amazing. But I don't I have a very dim view of Windsor Davies now.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah, it's that story, experience in your life kind of testifies especially with the outcome of the executive state of mind belief. It is like the old cliches. A lot of the cliches have a hell of a lot of truth in them.
Yes,
What the mind of man can perceive and believe, it can achieve. You
yes,
become what you focus on.
yes. And I invite everybody who's listening to look at yourselves in a different light now, raise your vibration, and look beyond, because you have talents, gifts, and abilities that you haven't begun to expand. You haven't begun to appreciate, and you can do more than you imagined. And with the COVID thing going on, and with many of you losing your previous job, you have gifts and abilities that you could be using now, and you should be looking closely at yourselves so that you can start to benefit from the talents that you haven't realized, and perhaps going into business for yourself. Because Jonathan's an entrepreneur and I'm an entrepreneur, but I used to have a job, job, just over broke, just over benefits. But now we're entrepreneurs, aren't we, Jonathan?
That's one perceptional label, perhaps, to give it. I just prefer to think of it in terms of I focus on doing things wherever possible that are things that make me feel alive, or that I really enjoy. Because if you can find something you enjoy doing and then find people to pay you for doing those things that you enjoy doing, or some element of it that's associated enough that it takes it away from being a job into a kind of vocation, something that a hobby that pays almost, then you'll never work another day in your life.
That's right. Well, what I like to think of myself as is I help people get what they want, and I love doing that, and I get paid for it.
Excellent. And that's the thing, you can choose to, you don't have to take society's labels for you. It's, on the one hand, labels can be used in a positive manner. So, fighting for LGBTQ and all the other letters, I can't remember them all, plus at the end, in the context of campaigning for people to be accepted equally, is of course a positive thing. But there is a negative kind of element as well, because by virtue of fighting for those things, you're having to draw more attention to the labels. Why should there be labels? We shouldn't. It doesn't really. It shouldn't matter whether you're black, white, green, purple, Chinese, English, Martian. It shouldn't matter about age, colour, creed, geographic location, educational status, if you're not causing people physical, emotional, spiritual, or any other form of pain, discomfort, aggro, or anything. That old cliche of treat others the way you'd expect to be treated yourself, at root, has a lot of truth in it. Unfortunately, too many people are walking around with a low self-worth, a negative self-worth, where they don't expect it to be treated properly, as it were, in the ways we've talked about. They don't value themselves enough. That they do treat people the way they expected to be treated themselves. Unfortunately, they don't expect to be treated particularly well, so they don't treat other people particularly well. If more people were to take time to cure that inner child, to release those things, to get rid of the fears, frustrations, failures, angers, anxieties, anguishes, resentments, regrets, remorse, and were to use forgiveness, acceptance, realization, release, and the kind of things we've talked about, then they'd learn to feel loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued, which in turn would increase their self-confidence, self-image, self-esteem, self-control, aka willpower, which in turn would amplify their levels of self-worth, self-love, self-respect, and positive selfishness. Because sometimes you've got to be selfish first to be selfless later. The example being on an aeroplane. If the oxygen mask come down and you've got, say, 3 kids, you put your kids, start putting the kids' oxygen masks on, you might pass out after the first one or the second, which means you passed out and your third child might pass out. Not good. Be selfish. I know you instinctively want to protect them, but that's why they advise you, put yours on first, then deal with the kids, because then they're not going to pass out, or if they do pass out, they're going to end up with an oxygen mask on them, so they're not going to die. So sometimes you've got to be what perceptively at first seems selfish to have the bigger impact of being selfless on a bigger scale. You've got to learn to love yourself and have self-respect. And when you've got that, then treat people the way you'd expect to be treated yourself, and the world could be a damn sight better place.
Yes. What is the plus for?
All the other letters of the alphabet that have been, all the different genders that we have these days, the way people identify. And that's great. I mean, the great word there is the way that people identify. People should have the freedom to identify the way they want to. And, you know, if you are that person, and I don't know if they were doing it as a tongue-in-cheek satire, as a statement on the events of the world, or whether they genuinely believe themselves to identify as this was a gentleman who's conventionally born as a genetically physical male who has gone in the media recently, sometime in the past week, I saw it on social media, that they're identifying as a female, Asian, I forget what the other bit was. Well, okay, if you want to in your own mind, but I don't think, I'm sorry, this may offend some people, but I don't think, and basically the media were pointing out that you may identify that way, but A, you're not Asian, and B, you don't have any Asian heritage, and C, you don't even look remotely so. So don't be surprised if people in that context don't accept you as being an Asian person. Sometimes these things go a little bit too out of the realms of, you
Well,
know.
my great grandfather was black Jamaican, but I'm clearly not black.
No, but it would give you every right, if you chose to, you'd have more logical right to, you know, in that context. But on the one hand, but on the flip side, if that person born as a male wants to identify as a female, fine, because as we know, there's the whole area of different chromosome levels and imbalances in people, which is a genetic, factual, provable thing. There are people who, just by virtue of circumstance, are genuinely born feeling like they're trapped in the wrong body.
Well,
and that genuinely happens.
I'm
So
definitely not female, although I may have female genes from my mother. But I've also got male genes from my father.
let's not forget. Well, exactly. We all, and let's not forget, Law, that all of us, whether we like it or not, we all start off as an egg and the sperm. And at this point, the egg, the sperm, even when they go together, it's a bit of a while before it's determined whether or not that becomes what is generally identified at birth as being a male or female human being. Okay. We all have the ability at birth within us to, well, at conception, there is the potential there for us to be one or the other or both. And in the world, there is proof that you can be both, because there are people born with both physical genitalia, if you believe that physicality is the only mark of gender, which quite clearly it isn't. That is nonsense. That is why we should be accepting of different genders and the way that people want to identify, because it's about what's in here or in here. It depends where you say the soul is. Is it in your heart? Is it in your gut? Is it the thought? Is it an energy that's within you? It's that part, how that part identifies. It's not the physical motor car you've been put into.
There's an actress, I can't remember her name, who is both male and female. I can't remember her name. Is it she was in A Fish Called Wanda. What's her name? I think she was both sexes.
Oh, I can't remember. Oh, right, okay.
And I wonder what that looks like.
But the thing is, genetically both sexes, but you know, be entirely, I say, up to that individual. It will be entirely their own experience internally, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, the whole XYZ, that would determine to them whether they're identified as male or female. And they're more entitled than anyone because they've got the choice of both. In that weird example, I know we're taking it to the extremes, but everyone's got that choice and should have that freedom. As long as, and this applies to everything in life, as long as you don't ram it down other people's throats. Religion, worship any god you want on the planet. You know what? Do it. Okay? I'm not going to get into the whole thing about, you know, this isn't a discussion about whether God's real. If you want to believe that God's real, fine, excellent. And you want to, whichever, whether it's Catholic, Jehovah's Witnesses, whatever religion, fine again. But don't come knocking on my front door and saying, would you like a personal relationship with Jesus? Ramming it down my throat. No, I will have my interactions and beliefs the way I want them to be. And yeah, and I won't go ramming them down people's throats. Yes, I have talked about them on certain podcasts where that was relevant. But right now, I'm not going to talk about that. It should be about people. You hold your beliefs, your values, and stuff as part of you and who you are. But just because you are, you don't have to go around walking around all the time. And there's some people do take, I'm a man, look at me, I work out at the gym on purpose. And, you know, look at my big flash bot. I must be a man because I've got sports. Bollocks. You just be a human. You don't need to,
yes,
no offense, you know, there's extremes in every area of life.
That's why I don't go to the gymnasium. Too many posers.
Yeah, and that's insecurities, and they're not those people. I'm not saying they shouldn't work out at the gym and be proud of what they've achieved and go and do bodybuilding competitions or whatever, but don't be so kind of arrogant about it. And what that is the insecurities that are probably held there from childhood or from birth up to about teenage years, roughly, we spoke about earlier. That if they were to do a little bit of inner child work, like we talked about, and use that forgiveness, acceptance, release, and the other kind of techniques we've discussed, they would find that they were a lot happier person and that they didn't need to prove themselves, apparently.
Somewhat. Yes, we've been on air for about an hour and a half now.
I'm not. I've got a clock behind me. Yeah. I haven't got one in front of me. I've not been looking at my watch.
I'm happy to continue if you want to, but I'm thinking about your time.
I'm fine for a little bit longer.
Okay, great.
If there's anything constructive for listeners, because we have shared a lot that people can get going with,
we
and
have.
The key message being take action, do something. You know.
We've just been talking about God not ramming it down people's throats. I'm thinking that you don't believe in a creator. Would I be wrong?
Well, of course, there's a creator. We're all creators.
Yes.
by virtue of procreation. But contextually, in the sense that you obviously meant it religiously. Do I believe in Magic Man? No. And I'm only answering that because you've asked me the question.
Do you believe in I don't believe in myself. I'm not convinced about the Bible. I do.
It's a great book of metaphors when it's seen in its entirety. But there's many of the books of that from the original King James Gospel that were removed by vote of a committee. So there's stuff that's been hidden purposely from the masses. It's a control thing, most religions, sadly. I'm all for religion. Well, spiritual beliefs is more me, okay? Because certain spiritual beliefs, not the ones that border, excuse me, that border into cults. I'm going to sneeze once more.
I'm not into religious control.
That's the key. The ones that go, look, believe if you want that there's a higher power, by all means, that you should something to focus on. But you shouldn't have to ram that down other people's throats, and you shouldn't become dependent on that. You shouldn't be made to feel that you've got to step foot into a church or religious temple, for example.
I agree completely. And my view of
you can worship from anywhere. If you believe in a God, great. But don't feel guilty if you are not able to go and step foot in a church because you've got something on Sunday. You know what?
I believe in a conscious, a collective consciousness.
Yes.
Because I've physically witnessed it when I was in coma, and that's where my belief comes. I believe in what I've seen. Is that fair to say?
It's very fair to say. Yeah, evidence. What is reality? You can choose to believe what you want, and if you want to believe things without real proof, fine, that's your choice. But to me, like you just said, I like evidence, cold, hard, personal, first-hand experience, and evidence.
I'd like to. We're speaking about evidence. I believe in what I've seen, which is what's in here. Now, although I've seen it, that is not evidence because I've only got one
perception.
I've got one witness, which is this. And at the time when I witnessed it, I'd had a major traumatic head injury, which makes it even more unreliable. But it seems real, and although but since I witnessed it, I've had changes in me that weren't there before. I've done things that are magical that you can't quantify. And I have to be careful about this word healing because we're not allowed to use it, particularly in terms of certain acts that I won't mention.
Things that are generally considered incurable, but the cure of the incurable things we've got to be careful with. But that word is actually two words, in, and curable. Put it together, it's incurable. It's actually a clue that the solution, the cure, if you like, is inside you, and that it's to do with mind over matter, bodily healing, balancing things out, letting go. If you hold on to fears, frustrations, failures, angers, anguishes, anguish, resentment, regret, remorse, if you walk around with the emotional baggage of self-blame, shame, guilt, and regret, it will manifest itself negatively at some point, more than likely, as a physical disease or pain symptom.
I'm not talking about myself. I've interacted with other people who have been changed because of my interaction, and I wasn't able to do that before I had that coma.
All right, well, that's partly vibrational energy. It's probably partly your attitude as well and intent. Just because you there's points where, life-changing things. A lot of people that I've spoken to actually have had near-death experiences. When you're still alive, when you logically look at it, and if things are going even a split bit different, you wouldn't be here in this motor car. It takes for the majority of people I spoke to, I know there's exceptions to the rule, but for the majority of people, it takes, well, they either go into a massive case of what was called shell shock years ago and has been relabeled post-traumatic stress disorder, which can be overcome because it's just helping the amygdala process the negatives. We spoke a bit about it before, so that you can deal with it in a different state of mind and release it. I won't dwell on that too much. Or they come to a realization of, I'm still here. I've kind of got nothing to lose. And you feel a lot more relaxed, and you're not that biggest fear that most people walk around with that holds them back is they spend too much of their life scared about when will they die? How will they die? And it sounds cliched and corny, but if you're walking around thinking when you're going to die, how you're going to die, or those types of things, then let me tell you something, you're already dead, because you're not living your full potential, and you're holding yourself back by channeling those energies we've spoken about into waiting for the inevitable to occur, instead of going bleep, F it, let's live in the moment. This might be the last day I've got. You know what? So make the best of it, so that there's no regrets.
I live in the moment. I'm not worried about if or when I die. It will happen, and that's that. I can do nothing about it. So I'm living in the moment, and I'm
Other
getting
people go, well, all right, I'm not worried about those, but I'm worried about how I die. I'd sooner die peacefully in my sleep.
Yeah.
You know, but not like the passengers did on the bus at the time I was driving it. As the old gag goes,
Yes.
but it doesn't matter, does it? When you die, as long as you don't, the only one that I'd be concerned about is that it's in a manner that ideally doesn't cause any harm to anybody else and doesn't overtly cause them any harm emotionally either. Obviously, people who know you are going to have some level of grieving. You can never escape that, but you know what I mean. It's not a tragic car accident that people might witness type thing.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I would never commit suicide, because I don't want to cause grief to anyone else. Because you can't, if you do commit suicide, you cause a lot of grief to everyone else, from the ambulance driver to the coroner to well, I don't have any family.
I totally agree, and I say that as someone guilty of having tried to end things when I was very young. On my website, magicalguru.com, on my resume page, there is a podcast I did for men's suicide prevention campaign that was held in England, where I talk about all that. But fortunately, it didn't work. Unfortunately, I did end up helping to heal the inner child and do the things we spoke about. And now I realize, again, it's a cliche, and I'm sorry, but it's a true one, that suicide is a very permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yes.
You know, the loads of people who've chucked themselves off high buildings to kill themselves, the vast majority are dead. But there has been like the miraculous one who jumped out of a block of flats like 18 stories high, and they're in hospital in a coma for yonks and yonks and yonks and yonks, but they actually did survive. Okay, if you go search on the internet, you see this is real. It's not they've been on a TV show. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but when they were interviewed, they said, so life had got that bad that you jumped out of a window. And you know what they said? They said, the moment I jumped out of the window, I realised I only had one problem, that I just jumped out of the frigging window and was heading towards the floor.
Yeah, an old school friend of mine jumped out of the NLA Tower in Croydon, which is about 18 floors, and he survived because his girlfriend had double crossed or double dated him or whatever had happened, or dumped him or something like that, and he jumped out of the 18th floor, and he survived, and he's crippled now, and she never visited him in hospital or anything, and why should she? But he's he's in constant pain now, and he walks around with a walking stick. And Graham, his name was, and he regretted it as soon as he jumped. And he's definitely regretting it every day now. And she didn't care about him and never visited him, and he didn't expect to survive. Can you imagine what he must have been going through his mind on the way down? He wasn't thinking so far so good, was he? On as he went past each floor.
No, I'll tell you what, I can guarantee he also wasn't thinking about those things that pushed him to the point of jumping out of the window either.
No.
So,
No. I wouldn't have the guts to jump off a tall building. No, I couldn't do it.
But far better, live in the moment, which is easier said than done sometimes. You have got to take action. It doesn't just, as we said, doesn't just kind of happen. And sometimes you do need, even if it's only for your conscious mind, to accept things, to help the unconscious, to allow things to happen, to go through an important seeming ritualistic process, help facilitated by a third party, which we spoke about is why a lot of people go to therapists, which is also why I've on my site, magicalguru.com, if you go there, click on the therapy page, the 4th or 5th video down on that page is called Virtual Interactive Complete Mind Therapy Treatment Session. And it is what it says. It's a virtual interactive 60 to 90 minute therapy session that you can safely use in the comfort and privacy and safety of your own home to help you overcome any habits, addictions, fears, or phobias you may have from A through to Z, or to help you to dissipate any emotional pains or traumas or whatever you may have. And it's completely, utterly free. It's my kind of gift to the world. Will it work for everybody? 100%? Probably not. Will it work for 100% of the people who are truly ready for change and to forgive themselves and to let go of the past stuff? Yeah, because that's the key. There's got to be an element of action and contribution from yourself as well. There's never a point where you just hand it over to a therapist and they wave a magic wand for you. That doesn't even happen with conventional medicine. Yeah, you can end up with a physical internal problem and go and require medical help to have that yourself cut open and it but right. Yeah, you needed the help for that, the third party, to rely on them. But if then you just assume it's automatically you're going to be fine forever and you don't do the necessary rehabilitation exercises, or you carry on doing the same things that caused that problem to happen in the first place, it's likely to reoccur or not get completely better. There has to be some element of participation and involvement and action on your part as well. That is why there's a multi-billion pound industry in self-help books and law of attraction. Why isn't everyone a multi-million billionaire and happy? It's because they don't take action, or the ones that do take action that it doesn't work for haven't dealt with letting go of the things that are holding them back in the past, that are causing the self-doubts, that are running the negative programs. You need to deal with them first for any conscious things to work. The approaches that say they'll reprogram your unconscious mind, fine. You can put new programs in there, but if you've not deleted the negative mind viruses, then it's the same as having a computer and putting new software on it. If you've not got any antivirus software on there, that new software can get infected by the crap that's still there. You've got to deal with the crap that's there first to be able to move forward. And that takes some actual effort. When you accept that you've got to put some effort in yourself and take some responsibility, then you know what? You can start that process of forgiving yourself, accepting yourself, releasing shit. And you'll feel a damn sight happier. And if there are any pains or discomforts still dwelling around, the moment you do that, you'll just It's like they crumble away.
The reason the world is in such disarray right now is because or not us, but most people are letting, and we're going to get political now, perhaps we shouldn't, but most of us are letting the government make decisions for us instead of making our own decisions, aren't we?
Fortunately, yeah, I mean, the word government, govern is to control, and ment, M-E-N-T, means mind. The word government actually means mind control. And that's not a conspiracy theory, it's a dictionary provable fact. Check a dictionary, check a thesaurus. Don't blame the messenger. That's the reality. And yeah, I mean, I won't dwell on that because, you know, all I'm going to say is in that regards, a couple of things. If you always believe that which so-called authority figures tell you, unquestionably, without doing your own independent research from multiple different resources and applying common sense and what feels right to your heart and your gut feeling and your instincts, then you are going to end up more than likely having large amounts of your life where you feel kind of imprisoned, controlled, or restricted. Whereas if you independently research things, go with what feels right with your heart, your mind, common sense, as well as evidence, very important, that at least for you and your reality and your world and the way that you feel, because it's different for everyone, as long as your conclusions and actions as a result are ones that do not physically, emotionally, or spiritually hurt, damage, or harm other people in a way that can't be avoided, and obviously you're not breaking the law, then you're going to be a lot happier and ultimately healthier and feel more of a sense of freedom doing that feels right, doing that you've concluded for yourself. Unfortunately, we're conditioned from birth to obey authority figures, even the education system. There's great points. We learn to do things. We learn to read. We learn to write. We learn to make sure we've got the right change when we bought a pint and a burger at the restaurant or bar. These are all very useful life skills. But the bigger impact is the reasoning for exams and stuff isn't just about so-called qualifications and being able to work out things. It's about marking people out as better or worse than others, but also it's about conditioning them to obey authority figures, because you learn stuff and then you do an exam to check that you can recall what you've learned and been told by an authority figure, and then you're rewarded and pass that exam if you prove that you've obeyed the authority figure, learned it and recalled it. You're learning to obey authority figures, take on board what they say as reality, repeat it and get rewarded for doing that. And you're getting told off for not repeating things correctly, which, yes, the answer to 2 + 2 is 4. So giving the answer 6 is always going to be wrong. But there are elements where you've got to use common sense here, but there's elements where if you don't give the answer that's prescribed by a syllabus to a question in certain exams, it gets marked down. And yet, and say history is a prime example, you'd get marked down for saying certain things, and yet there's massive evidence out there that certain things taught in history syllabuses is untrue. That old saying of the winner writes history is very, very true. You know, why do they brainwash people growing up to the idea that all the atrocities in certain world wars were done by the Germans? There were some massive atrocities done by the British, just as bad, but it skirted over because we were apparently. Look at the bigger picture. There's things you've never been told. What you live in, quantum physics, so-called accepted science now is talking about things like quantum physics. And you go out there, it's not a nutcase theory anymore. Respected scientists are talking about the holographic world. Now, a colleague of mine Dr. Robin Kelly, who was born in England, but he now lives in New Zealand, and he features in my documentary, Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, is the author of several books on the holographic nature of the universe and its interaction with healing, mind-body healing. Well worth seeking out, Dr. Robin Kelly, the holographic universe off the top of my head. You'll find it on Amazon. At the time he brought those out, he was considered, because he's a conventional medical GP by trade and training. It's just that he's opened his mind to other things. He was considered a bit of a nutcase in some arenas, but now in more recent years, they're talking about and when David Icke first said in one of his books years back that the world we live in is like the Matrix film, considered a nut job. In the past year or so, past couple of years, conventional respected world scientists have started butting out studies that argue that the world we live in is like the Matrix. It's a digital manufactured, it's all about our perceptions, and what we create has got there's no tangible, actual, it's not one thing that everyone perceives the same, because it isn't. It's generated, it's imagined, it's created. And this is coming from conventional avenues. Things that, the word conspiracy theory is, well, it's two words for starters, but it's not true to say that it was invented by the CIA. Lots of people go, oh, if you call someone a conspiracy theorist, you're just falling for what the CIA came up with to make people look like nut jobs. Well, actually, it wasn't them that came up with it. So actually, those people that come out and use that as a defense actually strengthen the position of people who say people are conspiracy theorists are nuts and don't research things properly. If you do the research, you find out it wasn't the CIA who came up with that term, but it has got this associated label of, if someone's termed as that, or what they're saying is deemed to be a conspiracy theory, that it should not be investigated further. It's nonsense. Well, no, if you think it's a conspiracy theory, don't dismiss it immediately. Investigate it yourself from various different angles and come to your own conclusions that feel right based on the evidence and what you can see. Because let me tell you, the past 18 months ago, people were saying various things that social media were blocking, flagging up as untrue posts, as being conspiracy theories, no proven evidence, nonsense, and to a massive extreme, a bigger extreme. Even Donald Trump, the media, when he was president, he was a nutter in some things, but there were certain things that they purposely distorted. For example, he mentioned a drug that its name I'm not even going to try and pronounce, hydrochloroquine. Can't say it, don't matter, you'll soon find it. Well, that's one of them. Yeah, those and the other one, those two. And the mainstream media made him out to be a nutter, that what he was saying was dangerous. It is now, through conventional media in England, a study has shown in the past week or two that said thing is incredibly effective in helping people with the thing that's caused the problems in the world, the pandemic. I'm not going to say it because sometimes it flags up on audio or video podcast platforms and causes problems, but everyone knows what I'm referring to. And it's now been shown. But what's more disturbing is that because of that, the study that said that the social media was saying was the proof that it was nonsense, that got it withdrawn from social media stuff, has been withdrawn and apologized for now. So the evidence that was apparently there for it again, and it's come to light through Fauci's emails that have been leaked and other sources, not conspiracy theories, it's all out there, go and check for yourselves, that there was evidence galore, and he knew for a fact that these drugs would help, but tried to suppress said knowledge for financial profit through other arenas and conflicted associations and interests. Follow the money is how the saying goes. So yeah, this did lead me back in 2019 to, with Brick in the Wall Films, make a documentary called Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, subtitled It's Time for the Sleepwalking Zombies to Wake Up. It's a 1 hour, 45-minute long cinematic, in its production values, documentary that covers on subjects of education, politics, religion, medicine, health, how the world's run, the banking system, basically every area of your life from birth, cradle to grave, and raises questions. And it doesn't say you have to accept what I'm saying. We raise questions, we provide some evidence for and sometimes against, and we encourage you to go and investigate for yourself from multiple sources to conclude for yourself. Because sadly, most people do walk around like brainwashed zombies, and they either immediately disbelieve something without checking it out, or they immediately believe something without checking it out. Whether you disbelieve or believe, whatever side of the fence you're on, you should check things out. Now, if you previously checked it out and have the evidence and conclusion, then yeah, generally speaking, then you might be all right to come to an immediate decision. But you've always got to entertain the possibility of new evidence or new findings coming to light.
And when can we see it again?
Well, it used to be a pay-per-view thing, but what we did last year, because of the madness in the world, and we thought this could help people to wake up and see things with different eyes, is that we made it free. So it's now available free on YouTube, and you can find it by going to magicalguru.com and clicking on where it says Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis. Or go to my YouTube channel, Celebrity Hypnotist, and click on the playlists, and one of those playlists is called Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis. And as well as the documentary, there's also podcast lore I've done, including ones with your good self, Keith, where we talk about mind control and break the myths, provide evidence, but as always say, go away and draw your own conclusions and find out for yourself. But there's things that over the past 12 months ago, even 6 months ago, were considered nut job conspiracy theories that have now been proven true. 12 months ago, there were people online posting stuff, proof that certain members of government had shares in companies, or their family members did, that would therefore potentially profit their family members, friends, even pub landlords in some cases that owed them favours that they had other business interests with. And lo and behold, they were called conspiracy theorists. Guess what? We're now at this point 12, 18 months on, and the evidence has come out that certain members of British government had friends, family, or even landlords of pubs that they go to but had other business interests with, that ended up getting awarded PPE contracts for millions when they had no prior PPE fulfillment, knowledge, experience, or contacts whatsoever. The government's had to write off millions. And this has been reported by the mainstream media now. And there are calls from people who were calling people conspiracy theorists 12 months ago, who'd bothered to take the time to search Companies House and find these links and the evidence, were immediately ignored. But when the lamestream media, who also lie to you as well, report something truthful that the conspiracy theory nut job brigade had found and put out on social media 12 months earlier, when the lamestream media, their rulers, their obeyers, the people they've been brainwashed to believe, tell them it, lo and behold, suddenly they believe it as well. If they bother to examine the evidence for themselves independently rather than immediately writing it off, the person sharing it might have been a nut job conspiracy theorist, whack job, who also believed in things that are quite easily provable as untrue. The person might have been who shared it, but the evidence they shared had its basis in reality if you bother to go checking it for yourself.
Yeah, the problem is they don't check it, do they? They just immediately say it's a lie, because that's what they're programmed to say, isn't it? People,
Yeah.
People nowadays don't check the evidence because they've been watching the TV for too long, so they're programmed by the TV to think everything's a lie.
And people assume,
except for the lies on the TV, which
yeah,
they think is the truth.
they assume the fact checkers are telling them the truth, or the media is telling them the truth. Well, in fact, I think more and more people are waking up to the fact that the vast majority of stuff in the mainstream media is either fabricated outright lies. Hence, you see more and more reports in England of Murdoch papers, the Mirror Group papers, the Daily Mail getting done for libel, for slander, for hacking people's phones, for creating fabricated evidence, as I had happen against me with Mazza Mahmood, the fake sheikh of Murdoch fame, that I've got going through the courts of appeal in London at the minute, that people can find out more about at circusofthemind.net. I think more and more people are waking up to that element of things, but yet they'll then still believe something that's reported about the government. Governments, we cover the voting system. If you had any real say in what goes on, they wouldn't allow you to vote on it. It's in the illusion of choice.
That's why I think so many of the newspapers now are given away free, because people just aren't buying it anymore, because they won't buy the lies anymore, will they?
Exactly. But the trouble is they believe stuff they see on television, TV programs. The reason they're called programs is because they're programming you to believe what the powers that be behind the scenes want. It's called predictive programming.
Yes.
They leak stuff into your mind so that when it becomes reality later in life, it feels more comfortable and acceptable because you've already been fed the idea.
Yes, my friend Peter believed the television. I tried to persuade him not to, but he believed the television. And I tell you, on the 15th of May, he died because of what he believed on the television. I won't say how, but I'll let you make up your own mind about how. But he's dead now because he believed what he was told on television, and he followed the directives on the television, and now he's dead because he didn't listen to me. He listened to the TV.
Well, it can have consequences both ways.
He's a friend of 50 years, but he's dead now.
People need to wake, and that's what the documentary sets out to do. It's not to say that this is right or this is wrong. It's to say, you know what, this could actually be, and here's evidence that shows this could actually be the reality. Now, I get that you feel this is currently your reality, but look at this evidence. In fact, better still, go and now, with this new knowledge you've just got, check out whether what you believe currently still stands up as reality or not. And it's to get people to start to examine, because they've got to take action for themselves. The only way you become free and not controlled is when you take action for yourself and independently research things to come to conclusions.
Yes. I will add to my previous comment, I'm not giving medical advice. I will say that again.
Indeed.
You must make up your own mind.
Exactly. And I think that kind of probably brings it. There's so many more things we could talk about, but I think there's more than enough for people to digest.
Yes, I think with that, I think we should round up the show there. Would you like to give your links again, Alex or Jonathan?
Three links. The main site is magicalguru.com, magicalguru.com. And on there, on the therapy page, you will find the free virtual therapy treatment session I talked about. There's a tab there you'll find that says free gifts. Guess what? Yep, that's right. You'll find free gifts. There's books. There's training videos that will teach you to be a hypnotherapist. The self-help stuff as well there. On the resume page is where you will find the men's suicide prevention interview I spoke about. If you click on the tab that says extreme danger, extreme hypnosis, that'll give you the stuff about the documentary and mind control. And if you go across the top toolbar of magicalguru.com, you will find links to all my social media accounts. So you'll be able to hop over to the Celebrity Hypnotist YouTube channel and click on the playlist and find one Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis to wake yourself up to the truth and reality of the world, or click on the ones that's comedy hypnosis shows if you want a bit of a laugh and a giggle, or click on something that's to do with self-help and therapy if you need a bit of motivational stuff. So yeah, everything's there. If you've got any questions, email me, contact me on any one of those social media platforms you'll find on there. Most importantly, do something, even if that's only putting into action one or more of the techniques or thought patterns that myself or Keith have been discussing and sharing with you today. Keep doing what you've always done. You'll keep getting what you've always got. Do something different. That's when change happens.
Alex, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Alex William Smith, otherwise known as Jonathan Royle. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
And really enjoyed it. You have been listening to London Overcomers Real Pain podcast. And if you'd like to comment on the show, or if you've got any issues you would like me to help you with, then do please go to Facebook and join the London Overcomers Real Pain podcast group. And I'd love to have you join me in that group, and I'll be able to answer all of your questions. And that is a private group, so anything you say in that group will remain private and anonymous, only open to the other members of the group. And so do join London Overcomers Real Pain podcast group in Facebook. And you can also comment on this podcast at Anchor if you have a mind to, and I would love you to do that. So thank you for listening to the show, and I'll be lining up some more fabulous guests soon, I'm sure. So with that, I'll say thank you and very much again, Alex,
Thank you.
Jonathan, your other name. And with that, I'll end the show for now. So thank you and bye-bye from London Overcomers Real Pain. And I've been Keith Anthony, your host. Bye-bye for now.